Okay, so before we start, we want to make sure you have all the supplies you need. You need an eraser and you need a ruler. So most of you will be using those kind of transparent orange rulers that are flexible. And you're going to start by taking your pencil and very lightly making a horizon line. So you're going to be placing that horizon line a little bit above the middle of the paper horizontally. And you're going to go ahead and you're going to write the words horizon line on that sheet of paper. And that's what I'm doing right there. I'm just writing that word horizon line. You're going to be placing a point, the vanishing point, right on the horizon line, and you're going to label it vanishing point. So that will be the point at which all the shapes, all those lines converge. And now what you're going to be doing is you're going to be filling your paper up with blocky shapes. Blocky shapes are the easiest for this step. If you feel like a challenge, you could challenge yourself with doing more curvy shapes like a crescent or a circle, but they are much harder to pull off. You could also do like an octagon. Stars are really difficult. A heart would be relatively easy to do. But if you're new to doing a horizon line and a vanishing point linear perspective, then I would stick to block shapes. So a shape with a distinctive edge. And when you're doing these shapes, each shape should be within that range of about 2 inches. Now some of the shapes are like 1.5 by 2 that I'm doing. That would be okay as well. And all your lines up to this point are going to be very, very light. In fact, all the lines connecting to that vanishing point will be as light as you possibly can. So you can see on my paper, it's visible, but it's not like I'm pressing super hard. And that's on purpose, because if you press too hard with your pencil, ultimately you'll end up with a drawing that it has flattened forms. It won't look completely 3D. And you can do L shapes, T shapes, plus sign shapes. An arrow would work. But it is much simpler if you have those straight edges in the corners to work with. And you're placing these shapes below the horizon line. You can put them on the horizon line and above. You want to kind of scatter them throughout your page. The only thing I would avoid doing is try not to get them too close to the vanishing point itself. And you're going to wind up with a total of about 7 shapes. Remember, a shape is something that's flat. We're going to convert these shapes into form, which is 3D. You make shapes turn into form in a couple of ways. One way is by making them go back in perspective so that you can see multiple sides to that shape, so it has mass. Another way is through value, so creating lights and darks. We're going to do it both. So we will create form through lines so that you can see the sides, and we will create form through value, lights, mediums, and darks. And that's why you go light, because you are going to be erasing a lot. In fact, it's really good to have a big eraser handy. You can see I'm going directly over that horizon line. You can overlap the horizon line with your shapes, that's fine. So I'm just cleaning that up a little bit. But there's the 7 shapes. Wait, missing one. Okay, now here's the 7th shape that I'm getting in there. And I'm doing kind of a backwards kind of C shape on that. U shapes work really good too. And this looks a little bit crooked, but it's because of the camera angle. When I do parallel lines, I try and make sure my verticals are parallel to the edge of the paper so that they actually line up with the edge of the paper. Same thing on my horizontal lines. I make sure that those are the same angle as a horizontal line on the edge of my paper. So I compare that. Okay, so here's where it gets a little tough. You're going to line up the vanishing point to the corner, and I'm just going to start off with one box. So there's the vanishing point. You use your ruler as kind of like a hand on a clock. It's pivoting off of that vanishing point. And you're going to be connecting usually about 3 corners. And you don't have to draw all the way through another shape. So I'm lining it up from corner to the vanishing point, and then I halt my line there. I don't actually draw through that shape to the left, that backward C, because I'll just have to erase it later. So I'm saving myself time. So what I'm doing right now is I'm lining up parallel edges. So whatever the edge of the block is, it has to be the same angle over here to close it off. And if you look at the sides make an exact L shape. There's an L in the foreground and an L towards the background of that cube. But it's like an L that's on its side. And then you're going to be erasing those extra strings attached. Picture them like spider webs. There's spider webs attaching from corner to point. And you don't necessarily need the extension. So corner to point, I line it up, corner to point, corner to point. But I'm not going to draw it all the way through there, because if I were, I'd have to go back in and erase it later. So I'm just going to leave that. And you can see me actually holding my pencil against the ruler, using it as a way to kind of pivot off of that vanishing point. So again, I'm looking for how to close off that shape so it doesn't go back infinitely. I'm closing it off. I'm doing that with a parallel line and erasing those strings behind that I no longer need. So this is a hard concept to understand, but I always check every corner. And you don't want to do that far corner, that one on the bottom left, because it's not a transparent cube. It's going to be a cube or a block that is solid. And all corners have to go back to that vanishing point. And again, I'm doing the parallel lines where I'm lining up the horizontal line or the vertical. That's the other nice thing about using blocky shapes, is it's either going to be a horizontal or a vertical. There's no weird or odd angles. It has to be either vertical or horizontal. And then you erase those lines attached. Try not to erase the horizon line itself. Try to keep that intact. So sometimes you'll have a long stretch, like in here it's a long stretch, and I'm lining it up, but I am not drawing it all the way through to the dot. It still needs to be lined up to the dot at all times, because I don't want you just guessing it has to be lined up, but you're halting your line before it can actually go through another object. So corner to corner, corner to corner. After you do enough of these, you'll be able to spot which corner intuitively, what corner should connect to that vanishing point. So if you feel lost at first, don't worry. The more you do, the better you'll get, and the more intuitive it will become. So on this one, the block to the upper left, you actually would not see more than 2 sides. So it's only connecting 2 corners to the vanishing point. That's it, because it's sitting right on that horizon line. And that happens in real life too. You'll see things like a semi-truck, the back of a semi-truck, or a Lego, and you'll only see 2 sides. You don't always see 3 sides. So the plus sign's a little bit difficult, corner to corner, corner to corner. So there I am checking to make sure there's no other corners that attach. And you kind of sweep off your eraser little shavings. The pink erasers tend to deposit a lot of little pink scraps. So I just brush them off with my hand or blow them off. When you get to the shading, I actually just lift up the whole paper itself and shake the whole paper, because otherwise you'll end up smudging your drawing. You want to avoid smudging the drawing. So the C shape is a little bit harder to close off because you have interior corners. So I'm lining up the interior corner to the vanishing point. Closing off the shape. Taking that parallel line. And I transfer those parallel lines too. I line it up with the edge of that shape, and then I transfer it over to the back to make it 3D. Okay, so now we're going to be making a small value scale. It's going to be 3 values. Your boxes for the value scale should measure 1 inch by 1 inch. You're going to label 1 light, 1 medium, 1 dark. And you're going to be shading those in using even, consistent shading. Go one way with your pencil stroke. Make your light very light. Your medium should be a true medium, and your dark should be distinctly